Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The top stories that we're tracking for you this evening. Pakistan attempts to engage 15 military targets in northern and western India overnight, says India's Ministry of Defence. India negates escalation efforts with proportionate response. The Defence Ministry says it has reliably learnt that the air defence system at Lahore has been neutralised. The India-Pakistan border remains tense. Defence Ministry says 16 people, including 5 children and 3 women, were killed in unprovoked firing by Pakistan along the line of control. India forced to return fire to halt Pakistani artillery. All political parties pledge full support to the government and armed forces after Operation Sindoor. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh says leaders present at the meeting agreed to whatever the government decided to do. Also informed them that at least 100 terrorists were killed in Indian strikes.
I know there's a lot of speculation in the media about how the World Bank will either fix it or not, or be approached or not. It's all bunk, because we don't have that role to play.
The World Bank has no role to play in the Indus Waters Treaty, says the bank's president Ajay Banga. Adds that the pact is between 2 sovereign nations and the World Bank can only play the role of a facilitator. That's an exclusive. Intensifying conflict between India and Pakistan caused a sharp fall in equities in the last hour of trade. Markets end near the day's lows, with the Sensex and the Nifty down 0.5% each. The rupee slides nearly 1.5%, records its biggest single day fall in more than 2 years. Stocks inch higher across the world after the US Federal Reserve held interest rates as expected. Fed Chief Powell rules out a preemptive rate cut to blunt any tariff impact. The UK is set to sign a trade deal with the US later today, according to the New York Times. This will be the first trade deal since President Trump took office for a second term and unleashed a tariff war. India offers zero tariffs on most products to the US, with the exception of wheat, dairy and maize. Sources say differences remain on non-tariff barriers. Commerce Minister Goyal is likely to visit Washington later this month. Conditional nod to Starlink for offering satellite-based internet services in India. Sources say a letter of intent has been issued to the Elon Musk-led company after it submitted an undertaking to meet license conditions, security protocols. The papal conclave at the Vatican spills on to day 2 as cardinals fail to elect a new pope on day 1. Up to 4 rounds of voting expected today. 3 of the last 5 popes were elected on day 2. Well, let's go straight to the top story this evening. The Indian government has said that Pakistan attempted to engage 15 military targets in northern and western India overnight. A statement from the Defence Ministry said India retaliated by targeting air defence systems in Pakistan. The government has said that it is reliably learnt that air defence system at Lahore has now been neutralised. There was heavy shelling as well at the line of control. The Defence Ministry said 16 people were killed due to unprovoked firing from across the line of control in Jammu and Kashmir. The ministry also added that India was compelled to respond to bring mortar and artillery fire from Pakistan to a halt. The situation at the international border and the line of control remains tense a day after India targeted 9 terror sites in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Lights went out at several cities last night for a brief period. This as part of a civil defence preparedness exercise in the face of a potential air raid. Over 20 airports located close to international border in 5 states have been shut for civilian flights. All airlines have cancelled flights to and from these airports till at least the 10th of May. And our colleague Parikshit joins us now with the latest. Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. The Defence Ministry making it clear that the Indian armed forces remain committed to non-escalation, provided that Pakistan respects India's response as well. Take us through what has happened overnight.
Well, we've seen very intensive operations between India and Pakistan ever since Operation Sindoor happened around 1 a.m. on 7th morning. Post that, we've seen very heavy artillery shelling by Pakistan all across the LOC and the international border. 16 civilians, women, children have been killed in those very disturbing scenes of firing happening all across the border. More than 44 people have been injured. Beyond that, what did Pakistan try to do? They tried to target military locations in 15 cities along the LOC and the international border. These were places like Pathankot, these were places like Amritsar, Ludhiana, Chandigarh, Kupwara, Jammu, Srinagar for that matter. But the Indian forces were able to retaliate effectively. Pakistan used drones and missiles to target military bases. We, with our air defense systems and our integrated air defense guns were able to neutralize, bring down all these drones and missiles. And you can see the debris on Pakistani media lying in places across the border. Also, the Indian Armed Forces, in retaliation, targeted Pakistani radars in different locations. We were able to absolutely neutralize and destroy. This is what our sources told us. They said we were able to destroy the radar system effectively in Lahore. Now, that was a very important message to Pakistan. Having said that, Pakistan continues to fire. Operation Sindoor is not over. The Air Force, the Army, the Navy continue to be on a state of high alert. But our message continues to be the same. We are committed to non-escalation, provided you do the same. Here, Pakistan has escalated things. We have the right to respond effectively. I would just like to point out that our sources tell us that every weapon system at our disposal, the best weapons and whatever we needed to do in these circumstances were used. And these are not my words. These are coming from defense sources. They were saying we cannot reveal what kind of missiles we used, but we did everything we needed to at that point in time. Our best equipment was used to carry out the strikes against Pakistan. A lot of propaganda on social media, and the Defense Ministry saying do not fall for it. Pakistan is churning out old photographs and videos over and over again to show damages on the Indian side. That is not true. Listen in to what the Defense Ministry is saying only. At the same time, the Prime Minister holding a very important meeting of secretaries, telling them that we need to ensure there is institutional resilience.
Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. Our colleague Parikshit Luthra there reporting on the developments that have taken place overnight, as well as the statement now issued by the Ministry of Defence in India. Kapil Kak, retired Air Vice Marshal, joins us now to help understand what all of this means. AVM Kak, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Let me start by asking you what you make of the statement issued by India. India saying that they have proportionately responded to Pakistan's bid to escalate matters. Pakistan trying to engage a number of military targets in northern and western India: Avantipur, Srinagar, Jammu, Pathankot, Amritsar, Kapurthala, Jalandhar, Ludhiana, Adampur, Bhatinda, Chandigarh, Nal, Falori, Uttarlai, Bhuj, and Pakistan has apparently used drones and missiles. Your first comments on what has transpired overnight, AVM Kak?
I think to me, as also, without doubt, the government of India and the armed forces, this is no surprise. There was bound to be a reaction from Pakistan to the very proportionate, non-escalatory, precision-targeted attacks on the terror infrastructure, which is being talked about, 24 terror targets out of approximately 9 areas in all. So this was expected. What defense analysts and those who believe that escalation of this conflagration is not in the interest of either Pakistan or India or the region in general, the Pakistani leadership has decided to be unwise. Instead of staying below a certain threshold of targeting military installations, they've done exactly the opposite. No need to comment on that. This is their wisdom, and we know how to handle their lack of wisdom. The picture reminds me somewhat of 3rd of December 1971. I was in that war. We were waiting for the war to start, and Pakistanis started with Shireen, exactly the number of airfields that you just read out were attacked by Pakistan, and that was the beginning of the war. I'm not sounding very, very negative in this, but I hope we do not start a 71 type of war. It's most unlikely, but the manner in which the Pakistani leadership has reacted, it imposes even greater responsibilities on the politico-military leadership of India, for the simple reason that in any escalation ladder climb, under a conventional limited conflict with a nuclear overhang, the responsibility and the criticality of the stronger power in the power balance between the two countries is immense. And therefore, the statement that we will ensure there is a proportionate response to even this action by the Pakistanis, and you yourself mentioned about the neutralization of the Lahore Air Defense network. I hope, and it seems likely, unless lack of wisdom plugs in again from their side, that it will stay at this level. We have used some very, very high technology, smart weapons, very precise. I mean, the entire public of India has now knows, thanks to the media like you, as to what were the type of weapons used. I don't have to go into details of those. And exactly similarly, we have used the appropriate high-tech, very high-quality air defense missile systems or whatever we have used against the attempted targeting of our military installation. I think so far it's so good, but once again, the leadership on both sides will have to take a deep breath and say, where shall we go from here?
And without meaning to speculate on where we could potentially go from here, AVM Kak, given the fact that in its overnight response, Pakistan has targeted these military bases, and as you pointed out to us, and thank you very much for that perspective, that this is pretty much what had happened in the 1971 war as well, what could be the other potential targets that the Pakistan military establishment may consider at this point in time without a full escalation?
The choice has been already exercised by the Pakistani leadership, and that being targeting of military installations. There could also be, creative responses like was done by the Pakistanis at Balkot. You remember when we struck Balakot, the Indian Air Force, Mirage 2000s at that time, struck those terror infrastructure, those 4 or 5 buildings. What was the reaction of the Pakistani Air Force the next day? They came with weapons which were scattered around the line of control inside our territory, but they did not give battle. They did not use precise targeting because they were that time. And that was a different leadership. Military leadership was different. Also mature leadership. They realized the dangers of escalating a conflagration into a limited conventional war, which will be not in the interest of either Pakistan or India. And if there is far, far more damage, it will occur to Pakistan rather than India. Because don't forget that Pakistan's position in terms of the closure of the economy window, the security window, the international relations window, it has so little of wherewithal to be able to sustain a conflict with India. More so if it stretches and it rises in terms of escalation.
Right. AVM Kak, this is, of course, also a war of narratives that is being fueled by Pakistan at this point in time. And we've seen repeated claims being made by ministers in the Pakistan political establishment as well as the military, suggesting that Pakistan has downed 5 aircraft of the Indian Air Force, something that has been refuted unequivocally by India. In fact, a short while ago, the Indian Defense Ministry issued another fact check saying that what is being circulated on social media are old videos and old pictures. But just for the benefit of our viewers, AVM Kak, help us understand. I mean, the Indian response has made it very clear that there was that India did not cross into Pakistan airspace, that whatever was carried out from Indian airspace and Indian soil. So is it even plausible what Pakistan is claiming?
Not at all plausible, but as a very senior media commentator, you will see through the game, because in this type of a conflagration, which is not interstate wars as we have done in the past, and we both referred to 1971, this is not even Kargil, it's even below Kargil. So in that sense, I think purely objectively and dispassionately analyzed, our response to Baisar, which was a savage attack, on innocent civilians, tourists, in a sensitive state of Jammu and Kashmir, which had just about started to look at a positivity in the years ahead, and economy was picking up. Kashmiris were getting more and more integrated into India in their psyche and their minds. And suddenly this attack obviously meant to derail that process of progress in J&K. And the Pakistanis always say we give moral and diplomatic support to J&K, but actually do exactly the reverse. This is precisely what is happening in the information domain. Now, due to lack of perhaps application of a sound communications and information management strategy, Pakistan has indulged in this disinformation and sadly and unconvincingly to the entire world, not least India, claim that they have shot down 5 Indian Air Force aircraft. Where have they shot them down? I mean, as you rightly mentioned, we have used weapons from our side of the boundary. So are we therefore meaning that they have shot down our fighter aircraft in our territory from their territory? How? I mean, there are no weapons they have to have that kind of a capability. So I think there is a lesson in this for our public and media channels like yours and many more, that fact-checking, bringing truth on the table, and defeating the designs of disinformation warfare, where optics and cognitive dimensions are very, very powerful impulses to change public opinion and attitudes.
AVM Kak, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us to help us make sense of the developments that have happened overnight, as well as help us navigate the war of misinformation and disinformation that is also being waged online. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. All political parties, meanwhile, pledging full support to the government and armed forces at an all-party meeting. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh appraised leaders of political parties in New Delhi today. He said that 100 terrorists have been killed in India's strikes, adding that since Operation Sindoor is an ongoing effort, details of the exercise cannot be shared at the moment. Union Ministers Amit Shah, Nirmala Sitharaman, S. Jaishankar also in attendance.
कोई छोटे छोटे बातों को लेकर के बयानबाजी नहीं हुआ और बाहर भी देश भर में पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज का स्टेटमेंट भी बहुत ही एक लाइन में आ रहे हैं. ये भी अच्छा चीज़ है जो हमको देखने को मिला है. तो ऑपरेशन सिंदूर का कार्रवाई, क्योंकि ये ऑनगोइंग ऑपरेशन है, इसलिए अलग से ऑफिशियल ब्रीफिंग नहीं है. ये रक्षा मंत्री जी की ओर से, सरकार की ओर से पूरा पॉलिटिकल लीडर्स को ब्रीफिंग हुआ है.
पुंछ सेक्टर में जो हो रहा है कि उसका एक वहाँ पर जो गोलीबार हो रहा है और उसमें सरकार से आग्रह किया है कि नागरिकों की सुरक्षा वहाँ प्राथमिकता देना चाहिए और इसके लिए सैन्य और नागरिक प्रशासन के बीच बेहतर एक समन्वय बनाना चाहिए. ये हम सरकार से मांग किए हैं.
Well, reactions there coming into the all-party meeting, but Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is speaking. Let's listen in.
यह क्या रोल अदा करती है, इसका नमूना हमने कल देखा. जिस प्रेसिजन के साथ यानी जिस सटीकता के साथ ऑपरेशन सिंदूर एग्जीक्यूट किया गया, वह अनइमेजिनेबल है, बहुत ही सराहनीय है. इसमें 9 टेररिस्ट कैंप्स तबाह हुए और अच्छी खासी संख्या में आतंकी मारे गए. जिस तरह से इस ऑपरेशन को किसी भी इनोसेंट को नुकसान पहुंचाए बिना मिनिमम कोलेटरल डैमेज के साथ अंजाम दिया गया, वह इसलिए संभव हो पाया क्योंकि हमारे फॉर्मिडेबल एंड प्रोफेशनली ट्रेन्ड आर्म्ड फोर्सेस के पास इक्विपमेंट भी हाई क्वालिटी के थे. ऐसे में इस क्वालिटी कॉन्क्लेव को मैं बड़े महत्वपूर्ण कॉन्क्लेव के रूप में देखता हूं. मैं इस आयोजन के लिए डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ डिफेंस प्रोडक्शन और इनके सेक्रेटरी डिफेंस प्रोडक्शन श्री संजीव कुमार को भी हार्दिक बधाई देता हूं और क्वालिटी एश्योरेंस ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को भी मैं बधाई देता हूं। साथियों, अभी मैं इस कॉन्क्लेव की थीम देख रहा था, फास्ट ट्रैकिंग ऑफ क्वालिटी एश्योरेंस थ्रू इंटीग्रेटेड अप्रोच एंड टेक्नोलॉजी एनेबल्ड प्रोसेसेस। आपकी यह थीम मुझे बेहद अच्छी ही नहीं लगी बल्कि दिलचस्प भी लगी, इंटरेस्टिंग लगी। वैसे भी पूरी दुनिया में इसमें बड़ी तेजी से डिसरप्टिव चेंजेस हो रहे हैं और खासकर डिफेंस सेक्टर में तो लगातार नए नए ट्रांसफॉर्मेशंस ये देखने को मिल रहे हैं। ऐसे में क्वालिटी असेसमेंट को फास्ट ट्रैक करना न सिर्फ रेलेवेंट है बल्कि मैं समझता हूं यह
Well, that is the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh there speaking on the developments, but more importantly also on the role of India's indigenous defence industry. Now, the World Bank has no role to play in the Indus Waters Treaty, says the president of the bank, Ajay Banga. Speaking exclusively to CNBC TV 18, Banga said the treaty is between two sovereign nations and the bank's role is limited to that of a facilitator. The Indian government has held the treaty in abeyance after the Pahalgam attack, citing national security concerns. Take a look.
The treaty is not suspended. It's technically called something in abeyance, is how the Indian government worded it. There is no provision in the treaty to allow for suspension, the way it was drawn up. It either needs to be gone or it needs to be replaced by another one. That requires the two countries to want to agree. The World Bank's role is basically that of a facilitator if they disagree, not by us making a decision, but by us being the party that goes through a process to find a neutral expert or an arbitrator court to settle it. And we have to pay the fees of those guys through a trust fund that was set up at the bank at the time of creation of the treaty. That's our role. We have no role to play beyond that. I haven't heard from either country yet about anything to do with the Indus Water Treaty. So that's exactly where it is. I know there's a lot of speculation in the media about how the World Bank will either fix it or not, or be approached or not. It's all bunk, because we don't have that role to play. And I wish you would help me tell the media that they should take a look at the treaty and realize that the treaty is a treaty between two sovereign nations, and they have to decide whether that's what they want to continue with. It's their decision, and, so be it.
Well, that's the World Bank President Ajay Banga there on the Indus Waters Treaty. Remember, that was one of the first few measures taken by the Indian government, holding the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance, as the World Bank chief saying there that there is no provision in the treaty for a suspension. It either stays or it goes, or it's replaced by another mechanism. Well, we will take a break, but when we return, more from Ajay Banga on tariffs, why India needs to seize the moment to boost manufacturing, and more. The stock market saw a sharp fall in late trade after the Defence Ministry's statement on Pakistan's attempt to escalate tensions overnight. The Nifty declined by 140 points, fell below 24,300. The Sensex dropped over 1,000 points, a cut of 2%. The Nifty mid-cap dropped 1,000 points, a cut of about 2% there. And the Nifty Bank was down by about 0.5%. The small-cap index lost about 1.5%. The rupee, meanwhile, has weakened sharply against the dollar. Also in late trade, the rupee weakened by over 88 paise against the dollar. That's the dollar rupee for you, 85.71. Bond prices also declined, leading to a sharp spike in the yield. So fair degree of volatility coming in towards the close of trade across the equity and currency markets. But back to our exclusive interview. India needs to seize the manufacturing opportunity quickly. That's the word in from World Bank's President Ajay Banga. He adds that zero for zero tariffs could pave the way for India to join global supply chains and significantly boost production.
To be honest, if we don't seize it quickly, the moment will pass us by, because others are moving on to it very quickly as well. But that doesn't mean India doesn't have an opportunity. The real issue is India's logistics cost is very high, even now. And if you look at the arbitrages I was referring to in the beginning, labor and logistics, you've got to be careful about the logistics cost, and fixing that logistics cost arbitrage is going to take some out-of-the-box thinking into how to change that. And I think those are not it's not a one-year cycle to change that. But there's work that can be done. I believe that India has the benefit of a huge workforce that could be put to work. It will need skilling. That's why I kept talking about skilling a little while ago. I think India wants to do it. I think the Prime Minister is very clear in where he wants to go with it. So that will help on one side. Working on logistics will help. And clearing up the processes of opening a business, acquiring land, managing labor, those are going to be very important, Shireen, if you want to really get into the global supply chain the way you want to. The other thing is, what will help really in global supply chains is a zero for zero discussion. So if the trade deal that comes through is that kind of deal, boy, that will facilitate the reduction of friction enormously, which is what you need for a global supply chain.
Let me also get a view from you on what's happening in the region. You've just come into India from Sri Lanka. The World Bank has signed now a new agreement with the government of Sri Lanka for $1 billion. This is a complex region, and we're currently also talking about an escalation of tensions between India and Pakistan. How do you see the region, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and of course India?
The question really is, this region, South Asia, is one of the regions in the world where intra-regional trade is abysmally low as a percentage of trade. So if you look at some trade numbers, which we started talking about the uncertainty in this space, trade has doubled in nominal terms in the last 20 years, globally. The share of the developing countries in that has also doubled from around a quarter to around a half. The share of developing countries' trade among themselves has also doubled in that period from around 20 to around 40 something. But South Asia is single digits. Africa is single digits, low double digits. Latin America and the Caribbean is similar. These three regions are not realizing the potential yet of trade among themselves as a great prophylactic from being over-reliant on one or two or three large buyers for your produce otherwise. And I think as part of this change of trade, this may be a good time as countries here strike individual deals with the US, which they should, as soon as possible to reduce the uncertainty. But at the same time, they should look at their own tariff and non-tariff barriers. The reality is that the United States has the lowest tariff barriers of any country in the world. Even before this 10% flat rate, even with the 10, it'll be one of the lowest. The developing world has far higher tariff and non-tariff barriers for various good and bad reasons. I'm not questioning the reasons. I'm just saying, is this an opportunity to change that? And everybody knows that if you reduce tariffs, while you go through some pain, eventually you get growth out of it. And so the question really is this the right time to look at facilitating greater intra-regional trade in these countries? And will that be helpful in itself? It won't all work seamlessly, but it's worth thinking through.
Well, that's the World Bank Chief Ajay Banga in India, speaking exclusively to CNBC TV 18. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue right here. Stay tuned. We're back in a moment with more.